All right, I think we're about ready. We have such a packed agenda. I think we should go ahead and get started. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm going to let Nicholas kick it off for us here. So
perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Christina. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Calderon, and I am the director of the San Mateo County Parks Department. And today we're here to discuss what we have now branded the Realize Flood Park, and you will see that shortly as we share these screens or share the slides. So we spent about 5 to 6 years reimagining what Flood Park is going to be in the future and reimagining how this vital community resource can serve the needs of the public today. And we are now at the point where we get to realize that this is really the special and fun part of this entire process, where we've collaborated with the public and we've heard all the different perspectives, and we've put together what we think is an amazing landscape plan. And now we get to really realize that and talk about how this park will function and how the amenities will support one another, and what type of features are in the reservation sites, and how are the playgrounds going to look and function, and where will picnic sites be located in proximity to the play fields or picnic playgrounds. So this is really a fun, special part of the entire process. So what we've done is put together what we think is really just an amazing group of individuals who are gonna help us through this process, and we're going to be able to collaborate and really make sure that the community perspective continues to be what is reflected from this project. And shortly we'll ask all of you to introduce yourselves, and you will see at that point that we have representation from all different backgrounds and stakeholder groups, and that's what's really going to allow us to make sure that we continue to be plugged in with the community and make sure that at the end of this process we have a park that is going to serve the needs of the community and really be something that people are excited to go to. And what we always say here internally is we're going to set the new standard for how a park is to function and serve as a community resource, and we truly are excited to do that here with Flood Park. So today we'll talk a little bit about the history of the project, the design phase, which is what we're in, and we really want to be able to focus on for the design phase how these features are to function, how they're to be designed, how they're to look. The landscape plan certainly is a reflection of what the public has asked for to date, and will continue to do that. And so there will be modifications as we go forward to that. I think one of the best things I've heard so far, and really is a great representation of what the design phase is, and actually it came from Alice Newton, who's on the work group, is shouldn't the nature play area and the playground be located closer to each other? I think that is a great idea and a great example of what this design phase really is about, is making sure we're citing these amenities in a way that allows them to serve the public best. So we're really excited about that. And we know that there are going to be a lot of different perspectives discussed today, but we're really excited to have our 2020 landscape plan, which again is this representation of what the public has asked for 5 or 6 years. And having that as our base starting point, and working from there to make those slight modifications to make it better and make sure that it continues to serve what the public wants. That's what we're here to do, and that's what we'll continue to engage with the public about. And so we just appreciate all of your assistance and insight, and we're really excited to have just this amazing group for brainstorming and collaborating. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate you dedicating your time for this. And I will go ahead and turn it over, pull up the agenda here, to do introductions actually. So, I'm sorry, next slide. So that's here's the agenda for the day. And I think this was emailed out to everyone with the appointment notice. So you should have that. Next slide, please. Hey, Chris,
Carla and Scott, I was wondering if you all, and Christina, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, and I'm happy to jump in.
I'll start and we'll go through the San Mateo County Parks people, and then we'll let and Christina, who's working with the department, and then we'll turn it over to CMG staff. So my name is Carla Schoaf. I'm the communications manager for San Mateo County Parks. I'm really honored to say that I've been associated with this project since the very beginning, 2015. That seems like a long time ago, and it is. But I'm really excited to, move this to the next stage. And I think each one of us want to talk about, our name, obviously, who we're affiliated with. And then also the one hope I have for this project is that given all the input and all the engagement that this project delivers, it meets whatever the dreams were of all the people. I mean, we're building this for, neighbors, residents, different user groups. So I hope it sort of at least touches on the dreams that they had for this project. And I will turn it over to Scott.
Hello all, I'm Scott Lombardi, Superintendent of Operations. Really happy to see this project moving forward again. This is a great opportunity for the community. And I reiterate what Carla said. I hope this project is more than what people ever even imagined. And that's truly where I want to land with this. We've spent a lot of time on this. We have everybody engaged on this. We have good minds, good thoughts, and I hope that this comes out just being a really positive project. So all in on this one. Christine, you want to take it from here?
Sure. My name is Christina Fitzgerald. I'm a project manager, engineer, planner, and is helping the department with this. I was working with the county before, but now I'm serving in a contracting role. So I'm kind of a little bit of independent, a little bit of part of the county. But my hope for this project is really to make sure that we are obviously making a successful project, but that we're balancing all the different needs of all the different user groups. This is a pretty large site, and we have a lot of opportunities here. So I know there's a lot of interest from various groups about what this project could be. So I'm just hoping that we find the right balance and that we can find that really successful, exciting project we're all talking about. I'm going to turn over to Hannah because I see that you snuck in here too. Hi, Hannah.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, I'm Hannah Ormshaw, Assistant Director for County Parks. I feel like Scott and Carla really hit it on the nose with the project. I know from my background, I've been largely involved in more of the natural resources side to date. So yeah, I'm eager to continue to get integrated more into the other aspects of this process as well.
I think we can shift now to the CMG team. So we'll start with Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Guillard. I'm a partner with CMG Landscape Architecture, and we are the lead consultant for the large team that you see assembled on the slide. It includes a lot of engineering, architectural, and other specialists. With us today is Skio, Miranda from Skio, and she'll introduce herself in a moment, but she is leading our community engagement efforts. So I did want to make a point of acknowledging their special role and the work that we'll be doing together with you all. And we're absolutely excited to get moving in this process. I think that it's fair to say that Flood Park is a very special place for a lot of different reasons. And my hope is that together we can reinvigorate it as an outstanding community space for everyone. And I just want to stress the idea of everyone. and acknowledge the work that everyone has done over the many years that led us to this point, and the great work that we can do together going forward. So look forward to working with all of you all. I'll pass it over to Lauren from our team.
Hi, my name is Lauren Stahl. I am a senior associate and landscape architect with CMG Landscape Architecture, and I'll be the project manager leading the design team. And my hope for Flood Park is that we can make it as inclusive a space as possible, and so that we can work with you all and work with the other members of the community to ensure that it's as accessible and enjoyable for as many people as possible. So I guess I will turn it over to Arturo from our team, and then we can move on to Skio to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arturo Fuentes Ortiz, and the hope that I have for this project that I wrote down is that we collectively put together a park that is intergenerational and that the community perspective is illustrated in the final design, and also see the voices of those who have been historically excluded in the design process of parks to be genuinely part of it.
Thanks, Arturo. Miranda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda Maupin from Skio, and as Chris said, we'll be supporting the community engagement process. And I'm joined by Maddie, also from Skio, if you want to say hello, Maddie.
Hey, everyone. I'm Maddie, taking notes today.
Thanks, Maddie. And I guess I didn't share, I guess one hope I have is that the final design will really serve the community vision and all the work that's gone into the park planning to date, and really bring joy to the community. I'm going to turn it back over to the county to talk about the purpose of the working group.
Should we introduce?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Right, the participants. Yeah, if folks, what we'd love to do is maybe I could just call on one of you, if you could introduce yourself, share your affiliation and one hope you have for the park. And then when you finish up, maybe you can call on one of your colleagues from the working group, and we'll just popcorn around that way, if that makes sense for folks. So maybe we could start off with Jose.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jose Luis Aguirre, and I work with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. This is a community program, and our goal is building trust between the communities, specifically immigrant communities and the Sheriff's Office. So we do that through so many events and activities, workshops, presentations, academies. And our involved here in this project is because we work here in North Oaks. And we do a lot of community engagement and a lot of outreach here in the area. And we have been working with the county parks in different projects, helping also with outreach. And we are very excited to be here. And for me, the idea of the park is to be very open to everybody, especially for the communities that we serve here in North Oaks, because in this area, there are not many spaces, green spaces for the community. So this is going to be really important for the community that we serve. Thank you.
And do you want to call on the next person?
I see Rafael here. So Rafa.
Thanks, comrade. Rafael Avendaño, currently Executive Director of Redwood City Together, but I'm attending today as a former North Oaks Council member, Siena Youth Center Program Director, and also Sequoia Healthcare District Board member. All throughout the process when I was having those three roles, I was an active participant of the Flood Park redesign, alongside of many active young participants who are not in this space. And the reason that I am actually honoring my time to do this is because of the hope that they give me for this park to serve as a space of healing and happiness in the future for the community. I feel like a park is a space of reconciliation, a space of healing and love. And that's what I hope this park will continue to bring for many families. And I will pass it off to Scott Marshall.
Hello there, I'm Scott Marshall. I'm a resident in Menlo Park. I was on the Environmental Quality Commission for 7.5 years. I was also a member of their Heritage Tree Task Force. And most recently, I was asked to meet with some community members about the process of the flood park re-envisioning process. And so I had an opportunity to speak with those members and then also the director of the Parks Department. I hope that the park itself is going to be a new idea, and there's going to be a lot of different ideas there that can work for everybody in the community. I hope that through this process, not only do we have a physical change where everybody works together, but that individuals end up talking to each other and get to know each other from different groups instead of having animosity, but actually we have some understanding and some friendships that are developed through this process. So thank you. I enjoy being a part of this. Thank you. And I would pick Alice Newman. I might have you wrong. Newton, sorry, Alice. You have to unmute yourself, Alice.
There, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I was actually going to ask if I could be one of the later ones to introduce myself because I'm making some notes about what I'm going to say.
Well, what about Rich Farrick? He's his son and my son are in the same school.
Oh, sure. So, hello, everyone. My name is Rich Farrick. I'm also a Menlo Park resident. I live on Bay Road, about a half block from Flood Park. So we've been here our family's been here for almost 20 years now. So I've been a neighbor of the park. I'm a member of Sequoia Audubon. So I've been bird watching or birding, is I think our preferred verb now, in Flood Park for about 20 years, even before I moved here. And also I spent over 10 years on the board of Menlo Atherton Little League. And so during the time of the Hetch Hetchy project, when the baseball field was essentially shut down from that project, and from that time on, I've had a lot of involvement with field space and field availability and things like that. So that's sort of my background for my participation on the group, on this group. And I think my one hope, aside from what everyone else has been saying, it's a really specific one, and it may have already been realized, and I might not know this, but I recently learned that there's no parking fee anymore, and that would be great if that could be. Thank you, Alice. And that would be great if that could be perpetuated into for all time, if it's at all possible. I mean, I know there'll be user fees associated with some of the rentals and things, but I love the fact right now that there isn't a parking fee there. So. Okay. David, you want to go next?
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. My name is David Klein. I'm coming here, like many of you, with a number of different tentacles within the project. But I grew up in Menlo Park my whole life. I also recently bought my first home about half a mile from Flood Park, just off of Marsh Road, which is exciting. So I have some extra vested interest there. But I also grew up playing baseball on the Flood Park baseball field. I went to Menlo Atherton High School. It's where I bounced the first balls over from third base over to first base. And so really connected with the park. And when I finished playing college baseball in 2010, I started my own semi-professional collegiate summer team, which is a nationally recognized program called the Menlo Park Legends. And it was back in 2010 and 2011 that I actually started working on this project, at least trying to get them to put the baseball field back and rebuild it. And then a few years later, Carla and Scott and I, and even Rich at the time, we started working together to try and get the ball rolling on it. So I'm really excited to help out. Obviously, I'm really interested in helping from a baseball perspective. I run a program, like I said, called I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Menlo Park Legends Baseball. And I guess my hope for this for the project and Flood Park as a whole is, as someone who has 2 kids in the area, that are, going to be growing up. I really want my kids and the community at large to have a place where children can go and be very much unsupervised and just go and feel safe, and parents can send their kids and they can just run around the park, have like a community center so kids can get off their devices and just go play unstructured, unsupervised. I think our world, and particularly the Bay Area, can get back to that. And so I'm excited about helping create a situation where the community and the parents feel that they could send their kids to Flood to just go around and have fun. And I'm not sure who has not been called or who hasn't been called. So it looks like maybe everybody. No, oh, maybe Alice.
Alice.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. I find this very exciting, and I'm very honored to be a member of this group. I have worked around in this area since 1974 and lived immediately adjacent to the park since 1987, which is 30 some years. I raised 2 kids here who played soccer, AYSO soccer, all the way through high school. My son played Little League baseball. And so I really am a supporter of the sports. We also have loved all of the natural qualities of the park. I am now retired. I worked as an assistant teacher at Peninsula School, which is just over in the Menlo Oaks area, not far. Classes from Peninsula School, walk over to the park several times a year and enjoy that. So I retired in 2013. And one of the things that I did as a retired person was to help set up the library at the Siena Youth Center. Our daughter was a director of a youth initiative that was headquartered there, so I got to know Raphael. And then since the reimagining Flood Park began in 2015, I have been involved with just trying to keep up with the evolution. The plan has evolved over these years, as you all, I'm sure, are aware of. And so it's been kind of a big project to keep track of it all. I have read all of the EIRs and all of the documents. And since we live adjacent to the park, we are quite aware of what goes on there. We walk there. And so I feel like part of my constituency are the older people who come and walk the trails for our enjoyment, our exercise, and the sense of peace we get. Also, I'm a grandma. I bring my 2 little grandsons that are 3.5 and 8 now. So I have a very special relationship with the different areas of the park, the playground. Looking forward very, very much to the new playground. The one that's there now has no tot lot. It's for ages 5 and up, even though many of the people who come with strollers. I feel like I have, I represent various aspects of the park, and I need to say that I have 2 great hopes for the park. One that I am encouraged about in hearing from all the rest of you, and that is that the voices of people who have seemed to me to be perhaps not heard because they don't belong to a specific group, like a lot of the people that come for the group picnics, the group of men who come and play volleyball almost every day. They've done this for decades. People that I'm not sure if they have a way to communicate. I think that now there's going to be reaching out purposely to these groups. And also to neighbors all around the park. My big hope, besides this communication to people, is that we can keep the woodland area of the park intact as a woodland. The original site of the second ball field that was behind the homes on Del Norte had various aspects that were problematic. And I'd just like to point out that for those of you who don't live near the park, Most of the houses here on Del Norte Avenue and the other side of the park were built in 1948, and there was no park fence. So they have very, very shallow backyards, which makes a difference. And then when I first saw the Plan 2020, that was a big surprise. I mean, that moved the field, as you know, into the woodland area. So that was a surprise, and is also dismaying because it takes up so much of the woodland that is trees and nature. So my hope, one of my biggest hopes, is that we can end up with the woodland intact and find a different place for that second sports field. So thank you very much. I have more to say, but I will later.
Well, thank you, Alice. So Miranda, if it's okay with you, I think this is a perfect segue that I can jump in and at least explain the purpose of the working group. Thank you all for being here. That I feel like this is a really great start to what we're hoping is going to be a very productive working relationship. So we'll go through a little more detail pretty soon about kind of what our schedule looks like and how many more opportunities there will be for engagement. Alice, you bring up a good point that this doesn't represent every single person. We understand that. This is not every single stakeholder that's going to be part of this process. But we recognize that a lot of you have very strong voices within the community. You represent various stakeholder groups. And so what our hope is for this working group is really to have opportunities for all of us to basically get together and share information, share concerns, and be able to hear each other. Sometimes that gets lost when we're having workshops, that if there are 100 people participating somewhere, that we don't get into some of these details. So what we're really hoping is that this provides a forum for all of us to share this information and be able to find those balances that we need. We know that not everyone is going to be happy about every outcome on this, but our goal is to make sure that we're balancing all the different needs as best we can and making sure that all of you can help us basically be ambassadors for the community, that we're hoping you'll take this information that we share here, you'll bring it back to people that you interact with, whether it's your neighbors or different organizations and groups that you're a part of, and then help us really to generate excitement about this project that we've gotten so far. The past 6 years have been so involved with a lot of people, and it's been quiet for a little while. So I think people are wondering what's happening, wondering when they can get back involved. So we're really hoping that you all can help us sort of share this excitement, get people to come to the workshops with us starting in the new year, and help get this project moving forward. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Miranda. We're a few minutes behind schedule here, but we can catch up. It's okay. Miranda's going to help set some ground rules, I think, for our group here.
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, since we are going to be spending the next 9 months or so together, we thought it'd be helpful just to come up with some shared ground rules. And I should mention there are a few other folks that will be part of the working group but weren't able to join today. So hopefully we'll have a few more folks joining us at our next session. But just some basic ground rules, to be present. I know it's hard on Zoom to focus on the discussion, share the space. I think we're hoping folks can raise their hand to speak. Assume positive intent, like everyone, it was wonderful to hear everyone's hopes for the park. It sounds like there's so much positive energy that folks have for the future of the park and what it can be. Trying to be respectful of other suggestions, being open and transparent about what what your needs and wants are, and committing to finding common ground. So just want to see if anyone has anything else to add or revisions that you think will make this dialogue really productive. Any other suggestions? Or thanks, Raphael, for the thumbs up. Do these work for others? Thanks, David and Jose. And Chris. Okay, great. So as we move on, if folks have an idea about a ground rule that you think would be helpful that you didn't think of now, feel free to just raise your hand and share that, and we can add it in. I think we're hoping this will be a really collaborative inclusive dialogue. So thank you. I think with that, I can turn it back over to the county. Just go over a little background of the park process to date.
Well, great, thanks. I'm, as I said, I've been with the project a long time, so I guess I get to be the historian. And, anytime we're in the middle of a process before we move forward, it's always helpful to look back. In 2015, we began a pretty extensive engagement process, looking to engage, obviously, neighbors, park neighbors, as well as those people who had come to have a real historical connection to the park for a variety of reasons, whether it was a sports activity or family gatherings, picnics, even corporate groups, everything. And we knew that just through our reservation data that we saw people coming from East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, Menlo Park, sometimes Atherton, and even beyond. But given that those are the communities that are really directly connected, engaging those communities was really important. So through the process, which we started with, what are the overarching goals and priorities of the community? What we heard from everybody was, promote a healthy lifestyle. And that's a variety of things. I think that speaks to something that Alice said about this multi-generational presence in the park. Gosh, isn't that great? We all want that. We want this to not be a specific demographic use group. We want as many different people to use the park as want to. We want to make it that kind of space for people. Preservation of existing trees. And I think we heard from a couple of members who really sort of reiterated that. We realize that in an urban setting, the tree canopy is really important, especially when you're out more in a passive way to sort of, benefit from that kind of environment. Incorporate innovative technologies. Now, I haven't really yet put my finger on exactly what that will be. I think speaking to David's point, hopefully it is not that we have people on screen time, but innovative technologies could also be things like adventure play or all-inclusive play. So we're going to have broad thought about what that could be. Create community gathering spaces. This is something that the park is actually quite known for. So I think continuing that and maybe broadening that and maybe even broadening, the communities that really see themselves in this park, and then expand types of uses, which is really what we see in the park planning with regards to beyond baseball, but inclusive play, a pump track, and so forth. So next slide. So project history for many of you who've been on this quest with me, you all know, what we started was in 2015 is really engaging the community and working through, again, the goals and refining those plans. And I'm not going to go through every single item here. I'll touch on the highlights. By the end of 2015, in December, on the box on the left, what you'll see is we identified a preferred plan. And we did that by taking the comments that we heard from everybody in the input. Mind you, this was 5 community meetings, as well as online surveys, both in English and Spanish, meetings held in Menlo Park and North Fair Oaks. So we took all of that, and what we presented to community members was 3 alternatives. I think natural, which was essentially not do anything. Central Park was the big, the big plan that showed everything. And honestly, you can't believe it, but I can't remember what the second one was. But what we, and I don't think we have a slide here, but what we came up with, actually we do, and I'll show it, I'll reference it later. What we came up with was a vote by participants, which overwhelmingly was the Central Park Plan. And then we asked people to make that better, provide the suggestions on how we could improve upon that Central Park theme. And we heard from people, and that's how the preferred plan came to be. And so over the course of time, we took that plan to the Parks Commission. We took it to the Board of Supervisors. We began an EIR process, and that was a pretty lengthy process. We received a lot of comment and input, and so that is reflected in that EIR process. We eventually took that back to the Board of Supervisors, who had some comments. This is the process of EIR. We reflect those comments, and it also, a lot of those comments that we heard from the community and the board were not necessarily anything new. We had been hearing this, sort of from a number of community members. So we reflected that, and we actually got to a 2020 plan, landscape plan, which is the plan then that we are moving forward through this process, and which is the plan that you as a working group will be our partners in moving that forward. Next slide, please. So this is what I'm referring to. I remember these meetings very well. Alice probably does, and probably so does David Klein. But the in-person meetings, remember those days when we had in-person meetings with a lot of people around, visual concepts of what something could be in the park, using stickers to, vote with your sticker. And then also adding some things that, people would like to see or enhanced or moved, or, any, whole variation of what people's ideas were. So again, this process has a pretty rich history in engagement. Next slide. Oh, wow, that was quick. So, sorry. So again, we have now a 2020 plan that is reflective of what the community told us that they wanted. It's also reflective of what we heard during the EIR process, and that is the plan that we are moving forward now. And I'll let CMG or Scale go through the process of how this next phase of the design phase, which is actually the realize Flood Park phase, will be, and how the working group is key in helping us get through this next phase.
Actually, I can jump in here for finish up the design part of it before we switch it to CMG. So we mentioned before that was basically the sort of reimagine preliminary design phase. The phase that we're in currently is what we're calling the design phase now. So one thing I want to emphasize here is that we're not going back to the drawing board at this point to start from scratch and figure out sort of what kind of elements we want to be in here. We've already done that part. So I know some of you are newer to the process here, but at this point, we are basically moving into some more of the detailed phase as opposed to kind of the overall visioning. So anything that we had finalized by the EIR and what was approved in the EIR is basically what we're authorized to do at this point. If we were to change any elements dramatically, we'd have to start over with the EIR, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. So at this point, this is where we are. We are currently in this pre-design phase we're calling right now. This is our first kickoff meeting that we're having with you all first. We basically wanted to give you a little preview of sort of what to expect over the next couple of months. We are anticipating that we're having our first public workshop in February, the first week of February of 2022. We're hoping it could be in person, but again, we'll have to kind of see what happens the next few weeks. If we can't do it in person, we will do an online forum again. But this is our first opportunity to really re-engage the public. So we're having, as you can see here, the 12, 13, 21. This is our first working group in advance of the workshop. And you'll notice that we've paired the working group meetings to fall both before and after the workshops. So the idea is that we can communicate with you ahead of time. We can get your feedback on what to incorporate into the workshops. And then we will meet again after the workshop to do a little debrief with all of you. We'd like to hear your feedback on what worked, what didn't, whether or not you feel like the voices were heard properly, whether or not we're on the right track, basically. So that's why we've scheduled the working groups to be before and after the workshops. Then in addition to the workshops, we'll have 3 of those throughout the year, one at each design phase. So basically one before the schematic design, one before design development, and then one as we move into documentation. We're also going to have what we're calling community pop-up events. And these may vary in terms of where they'll be or what kind of event they'll be. It may be piggybacking on existing events, something that may be occurring already, like a farmer's market. We could also have a specific event at the park itself, just asking people who are already using the park what they think of certain design features. But the idea is really to make sure that we're having a pretty robust engagement process here and not just operating sort of in our own little silos here, that we want to make sure we hear all the voices from the community. We'll have ample opportunities for people to contribute. So beyond this working group, we'll still have additional meetings beyond this. So the next slide, then I think we're moving into just some Q&A. We have a lot more detail. We want to talk about the actual design plans and the phases here, but I thought we'd take a little break first and see what you all have in terms of questions right now, that whether it be process or just sort of timeline or how things are working, that we'd love to hear from you all. And you can feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute yourself, or let us know if you want to say something. Okay, it looks like Raphael has his hand raised.
Yeah, just as far as working group design, expectations for working group members as far as packets to receive study material to come ready to the meetings, and also the research or methodology that's going to be allowing us to do the best for our community. Those are my 2 questions.
So your question basically requesting when you're going to be getting materials to review or distribute. So I do apologize for this one. I realize this was a super fast turnaround. This is not how we intend to operate. We really wanted to make sure we had a meeting before the end of the year here. And obviously with holidays, it was miraculous you were all available today. I don't know how that actually happened, but thank you all for making that happen. So we will make sure that in advance, we will be getting you materials well in advance so you have time to review and prepare. And then similarly with any materials that we're going to have you help distribute before the workshops, we will give you ample time, ideally 2 weeks. We'll see if we have enough time to review that, but we're hoping to have at least 2 weeks so you can send notifications out then to your groups. But did that answer the whole question, or do you have a second part? I can't recall.
No, that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, Christina, I just have a quick one. Rich asked earlier about fees for Flood Park. That's not vehicle entrance fees. That's not a pilot. We've waived those fees and taken vehicle entrance fees off the books and out of the fee schedule. So there's no intention that I've heard and that I have of bringing those vehicle entrance fees back at Flood Park. So we'll certainly work on getting more word out of that. But Rich, I wanted to make sure I addressed that for you and the group.
No, thanks. I appreciate it, because I always walk in, so I was just unaware. But yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I just have one question about I guess the design, and I think somebody mentioned that we obviously don't want to change things in the park too much because we need to go through a new EIR. So with that being said, I from my last conversation with you, Nick, you did say that there were a few things that kind of were still up in the air a little bit. So my question is, to what extent are things really changing as far as like, hey, this is gonna go here, this big item versus there, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, David, great question. So the landscape plan the landscape plan was analyzed pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And so what happened when we did our analysis is we identified what the impacts of all of those uses are. So we can shift the location of uses. We are in this phase to talk about the designs, right? So using playground as the best example, we know there's going to be a playground. Are there going to be, slides? Where are the slides located? What type of other features and structures are part of that? That's what we're here to discuss during this design phase. But what we can't do is add new amenities, right? So we can't say, right now there's 2 tennis courts. We can't say, you know what, let's have 10 tennis courts or 5 tennis courts, right? That wouldn't be allowed. Like Christina was saying, that would be an increase in the impact of the project. But what can happen is amenities can be reduced in size, certain amenities, certainly if the public at large is saying, maybe we don't want that anymore, then that's a decision that could be made. But again, it is vital that this project reflects the values of the public and those that are participating. And so, so as long as what people are asking for is within the parameters of what we've analyzed, then we would be fine. But if people were saying, you know, let's say this group was saying, well, I'm going out and I'm talking to my folks and I'm hearing this and we want to add something, that wouldn't really be something we could do. But again, I'm sure, and Alice talked about it, you know, relocating and fields and how does that work? Those are things that we are going to have to really discuss here. But it has to be done within it has to be done within what we're being told by the public at large that they want. I think one of the things that we're going to hear a lot during this design phase is there are a lot of people in the community who participated for 3 or 4 years in this process, and they are of the opinion that it's done, right? At this point, the next step is us constructing it. And so we need to make sure that we're re-engaging with those members of the community because they took the time to participate and their values are reflected in the landscape plan. And we want to make sure that that continues to happen. So that's why this community engagement process is so important, is so that the final product and the final design truly represents the needs of the community at a large. Did I answer that question, David?
No, that's awesome. That makes a ton of sense, and understand that a lot better now. I think my other only question would be from a funding perspective, are there any hurdles that need to be jumped in order to actually pull this off? Is there fundraising that needs to be done, or is there money set aside? Curious about that.
Yeah, I'll take that one as well, David. Great question. So we have money set aside in our budget right now, certainly not enough to build the entire project in one effort. So later on, I believe Chris will talk about kind of phasing and how phasing has been considered to date and how it was analyzed in the EIR. We do currently have a funding gap. And so as funding becomes available, what gets put into what phase will be based on that, but also as grants become available, you know, we really think this project is competitive. Excuse me. We think this project is competitive for grant funding, and so we're constantly pursuing that. But at this point in time, we don't have enough money to build it in one swoop. But the other thing is we don't actually know how much it's going to cost just yet, because you know, I think the 2 greatest examples of not knowing how much it's going to cost is, are the fields going to be natural turf or artificial turf? That will have an impact on your upfront costs. The playground, you know, it is our hope and our intention and our desire that our playgrounds here are going to be all ability, similar to what is in Palo Alto, similar to what was done at Red Morton and Redwood City, similar to what Curiosity just opened in Coyote Point. And those playgrounds oftentimes will come with a higher price tag than more traditional play structures. We think that money, that investment really is well worth it to make sure that we are as inclusive as we can be, but that will increase the price tag. So we just need to be able to navigate that. And until we have these designs locked in a little bit more, that final price tag is unknown, and then how many phases will be needed is unknown.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks for that, Nicholas. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, are there any additional questions at this point before we move on to more of the facilitated design discussion?
Christine, could I say something? This
Sure.
is Alice. I'd just like to add to what I said before, that when I first learned about the Plan 2020 and the location of the second field in the woodland, I was really surprised, and I started talking to my neighbors and people, and it became really clear to me that people didn't know what the plan looked like. They didn't realize that this field would be right there where it was, where there are the trails and the big trees and all of that. So the more I started talking to people and realizing that it seemed that people didn't understand that part of the plan. We held a meeting, an information meeting. We ended up actually, my family and I, and then this kind of movement kind of grew. We had 5 information meetings just held in the park to inform people about the plan, and with a goal of helping people to think about it and have an informed opinion and questions and comments and etc. when the public input meeting happened. So we, so many people were surprised that that location and those trees that they valued were on the Parks Department's on the tree removal list to be removed. We started a petition that we started this in April, and the petition, many of you have seen it. I have emailed the Board of Supervisors and Nicholas and Carla and tried to make all of the official people aware of what we were doing. So this petition basically says that we hope that the new amenities can be built under and around the trees, with minimizing the removal of the trees. And that petition from April to now has almost 3,000 signatures. So the way we feel about this and the response we've gotten from people is that they love this park and they want it to be finished, and they are looking forward to the amenities. We all are, and we think that there is so much that is really good and in the plan. But they were surprised by this aspect of it and are really hoping to minimize the tree removal. So I just wanted to bring this up. There is a website that is there, floodpark.org. So I just want to invite you all to look at that, and just to know that our goal has been to help the public know what the plan is and to be involved in it. I think the goal is the same as what this working group goal is, for the public to be really more involved in the planning of the park than they have been. So I think I don't want this effort to minimize the tree removal to be looked at as an opposing the sports fields, because it isn't that at all. You know, I raised sports players. It isn't an opposition to sports or to fields or to 2 fields. It's just hoping that the plan can be modified a bit so that there's less tree removal and that the woodland, the historic woodland, can be kept intact. So I just wanted to be sure that was clear, that that's part of what I'm doing too. Thanks, I think that's it.
Yeah, Alice, thank you so much. And you know, I think this really highlights the value of this group and the importance of the work that we're doing here, which is that we all get to hear one another's perspectives. There are a lot of different needs and wants that exist for this park, and making sure that we're able to consider those and hear those, and then really make sure that we can take that message out to the public and solicit that information as a whole is what we're here to do, and really what a public process is about. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And again, I think it really highlights the value of this group having such different perspectives, but also everyone really wearing at least 2 hats, if not maybe 3, with regards to your connection to flood and this overall project. So I certainly appreciate that and value that. And I think there's a slide later that kind of shows the evolution of the landscape plan. And I think it shines a lot of good light on how we got to where we are today.
Thank you, Nick.
I think that's a good point too for us to transition. We'll have more opportunities. We can do more questions, but figure we should move into the discussion here with CMG. I did want to make one point that we are recording all of these meetings. So when we do our working group meetings, that these aren't intended to be closed door by any means. We will be putting these up on the county website. That's where we're putting all the official information about the project up on there. So, so just, yeah, FYI, I want to let you know. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Unmute. Thank you, Christina. If you could go ahead and, yeah, thank you. So yeah, that was a perfect segue. Before I jump in here, I did just want to touch on the mission of art practice and how I think it so much relates to what we've all been talking about. And that is, we're really focused on improving social and ecological well-being through artful design. And I think Flood Park has this amazing tradition of bringing people together socially, but it also has this magnificent canopy that provides ecological value and so much to the community from a natural standpoint. And so as we've, taken on the role of, evolving the plan, we've been able to look back at the evolution of the plan. And so on the left is the Central Park alternative. And then the 2015 preferred plan shifted the second flex field. That's the big change there, obviously, up to the northeast corner of the park, proximate to the neighbors. And if we go forward to the 2020 plan, we can see that in part, as a response to some of the neighborhood context concerns and working through the EIR and maintaining a kind of consistency with the previous program, which did include that second flex field, that it was shifted down to the center of the site there. That's number 16. And so, all the other programmatic elements that have been included, as Nicholas and Carla touched on, are ones that came out of the robust community engagement process. And I think there was a lot of dialogue about the restoration of the baseball field, the inclusion of the flex field, the larger flex field as part of the baseball field, which is number 15 there. And then each of the other, major recreational activities, from tennis to volleyball, the inclusion of the intergenerational all access play space, spaces for gathering, all of those came out of that effort. And so I think the big question going forward is, how do we evolve the plan, look at the way that things flow, how they're related to one another, and importantly, how they're related to the canopy. And so I'll touch a little bit more on that in a moment. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So yeah, all of these different, I think, key social and natural programs that came out of that process, from Destination Play, the picnic areas, which we understand is a big part of the tradition of Flood Park, and one that we're excited to refine and develop. The intent there really at this point is to maintain the general picnic program overall, in terms of the type and scale of the picnic facilities, and whether they're for a reservable basis or drop-in. Of course, access to nature and actually improving the habitat value of the park will be an important goal of ours in the development of the design. We've touched on the active recreation, that is multi-generational, bringing people together and creating spaces that really allow for that intergenerational and community connectivity. And then the culture and history of the site are such an important part of the story here, and specifically the adobe structures. We've been considering ideas around public art, although I'll say that a public art program is not a current part of the scope of work that we're working on, but we recognize that art and community and culture are all woven together. And then lastly, really looking at this connection with nature in terms of adventure play. So that's our starting point, is really this amazing program that the community has developed over these past years, and then evolving that into a plan that brings it all together, and importantly balances this natural and social park space that we're seeking to reinvigorate. That brings us a little bit to the phasing. Nicholas touched on that, and this is a list of the different components of that program that were established as part of that previous planning process in the EIR. And there's a couple of factors here that we'll be evaluating as to the exact phasing. This is not something that is fixed. I think it could be very fluid. Looking at our available funding for the project overall, looking at the total cost of the project, and then understanding where are the priorities based on what we've heard to date and as part of our upcoming process in terms of constructing the park. Looking at impacts to different parts of the park and the questions around sequencing to make sure that we're not undoing work that was previously done, or creating issues with parts of the park that would want to remain open and functional while certain parts are being renovated. And then lastly, with a few grants, there are a few grants that are already in place. One is a flex field grant, and the other is for the pump track. Those are grants that have been received, and they do have some date timelines on them. So those two elements will likely be in that first phase, along with the rehabilitation of the ball field, the larger flex field, the new sand volleyball courts, basketball, and renovation of a few of the restrooms. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. Suffice to say, we'll be talking with you all about what the right ordering of these are. So for our upcoming workshop, our plan is really to reconnect with all of the stakeholders that were engaged previously, and of course, reach out to new communities and really come into this conversation with a sense of momentum and hope that we're going to bring the project along and realize it, move from imagination to realization. And basically what we'll do is we'll provide some background similar to what we have provided with you all today in terms of the history of the process going forward, and opportunities for community members to be engaged. And then we're going to break into a series of groups. We'll do two rounds of groups for people to participate and engage in. And we've developed this series of different interactive activities to gather input and ideas for the development of each aspect of the design. The first one is around active sports and recreation. The next one is really about history and culture and stories that we can tell in the place, and specifically ideas for the reuse of the Adobe administration building. The next one is really a focus on picnic areas and gathering spaces. Another focus group on the play spaces that have been envisioned. And then last but not least, the idea of urban forests and ecology. And so in that group, we'll be sharing information that the county has gathered through a very extensive arborist survey of the park as it is today. And we'll be looking at the different species of trees and their general health and condition overall as a guide to our work going forward. And I just want to note that relative to that, our hope and ambition is to find a way to not just preserve trees, but as we think about the flood park of the future, we're thinking about habitat creation. How can we improve the ecology of the park? And importantly, how can we improve the resilience of the park in light of climate change? And so we'll really be looking at the urban forest comprehensively, starting with how do we minimize tree removal? So I'll leave it there, and I think that's a good starting point.
Thank you, Chris. I think what we'd love to do is just take a few minutes to hear from each of you. And I think Alice kicked us off earlier in terms of sharing the concern about minimizing trees, but we'd love to hear from others as well. If you have any concerns or opportunities you see in those 5 design areas that Chris presented.
Hello.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, hi. On the sports fields, I know there's still a decision to be made about the material that the field is going to be made out of, either a grass field or a turf field. Kind of a 2-part question. It would seem that a grass field might provide access to more people if it wasn't so maybe nobody said it. Turf fields I find sometimes have to be fenced in because of, you have to treat turf fields with a different type of respect than grass fields. Obviously you can't eat on them. You don't want to wear them out. So if some of the fields, if these fields were grass, maybe they wouldn't need to be fenced in. And then it might allow for when there's not a reserved use, then you could have families picnicking or throwing frisbees or something like that, instead of having something enclosed where it actually would shut off the park for that area and make it less accessible. So I know it's a question to be answered, but it's something that crosses my mind right now.
Great, thanks, Scott. Other opportunities or concerns that come up for folks in thinking about the park design?
Could I guess add something? Well, go ahead, and then I'll.
Yeah. Maybe not so much on design, but just the slide there on the phasing. One concern / opportunity is I hope we can do this in a way that keeps as much of the park open as possible during the entire process, because it's because I know it's not going to happen overnight. It'll probably be a year, 2, 3, whatever. But as long as the community still has some access to the site on an ongoing basis, I think that would be really important.
Great. I see Raphael has his hand up, and then I think Alice, you'd want to jump in again as well.
Thank you.
Raphael?
Yeah, thank you. I think the process looks great. I think as far as us driving out the work for the community, I love to just engage the expertise of my comrade, Jose Luis. We have a pretty good platform when it comes to engaging community members on not just a social, but also a physical kind of spectrum within North Fair Oaks and Redwood City. So yeah, when we get to that more like, when I'm thinking about like possibly surveying or hearing their voices, especially with the world that we're living in now, I'm just thinking how we could really entertain having upwards to like 1,000 to 2,000 people engage in the process to really move this kind of this needle of like phasing in an inclusive way. So in addition to that, hosting a different community-based organization space. So I'm excited to talk about that. And I think that's going to be the nuts and bolts of where I'm known to be most resourceful. So I'm excited to talk about exploring that in the near future with the partnerships that we've garnered over 10 plus years being in this community. So yeah, I don't know if Jose wants to add anything, but we've had some really good turnouts working with Supervisor Slocum on the Facebook Live platform in the past year. So if that's a segue or even an in-person, would be kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. We just need to find ways, because sometimes the outreach is one of the hardest parts of all the process, and how to get people involved and motivate them. So probably it's good, looking at the plan and the public meetings and everything else. I think that's good. We are working also here, the Sheriff's Office, in bringing back the North Fair Oaks Festival in August, which is going to be a great opportunity to reach out to a larger community. So even though we're just in the planning stage, we're just beginning to meet. But I will keep the group posted whenever we have dates, and it will be nice to participate there. And I think that's a great opportunity to reach out to the community here in North Fair Oaks. One of the concerns I have, and probably this is with other parks, sometimes the leagues like soccer leagues or baseball or the sports, they take all the fields, and there's no opportunities for the community if they are not part of the league, or if they just want to play. Is there any moment, or is there any days or any times that those fields are just dedicated for the community, or everything is you need to rent that to different leagues, or how that works?
Can I address that? I know we're probably coming up on time, but Jose, that's a phenomenal question. The department has committed that we have heard through the public process a need for both programmable space and drop-in space. And so we're committed to meeting both of those needs. And what that means is the fields, whether there's, however many fields there are, however many amenities there are, they cannot always be programmed and they can't always be available for drop-in. So there's going to have to be a balance. And so based on how the landscape plan is currently set up in the 2020 landscape plan approach, there are those two flex fields or multi-use fields, which actually, if that landscape plan reflects how the final product or project really looks, that would allow us to program one field and leave one field open for drop-in use so that people could go and have a good time with family, go and have a good time with friends, right? I think that's one of the most common ways people use parks is just to go and have fun and throw a football around, kick a soccer ball around, throw a frisbee, whatever it is. But if you don't have that space to do it, then you can't do that. So we need to balance both of those uses, and we're committed to doing it. And I'm being so I'm emphasizing it so much, and I put it in everything that we write about because we are that committed to it, that we are here to meet both of those needs. And that's because that's what we've heard from the public, is that there is a need for both of those. So I hear what you're saying. I think based on what you're saying, and I've heard from the public, those are both very consistent, and we are here to do everything we can to meet the demand for both of those.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
I want to make sure we save a little time to talk on the outreach conversation that you started, Raphael. But before we go there, I know, Alice, you wanted to jump in, and also just want to make sure we heard from David if you had anything to add.
Thank you. This is just an idea that's just mine. That hasn't come from anybody else, my friends and neighbors. And that is a concern about the adequacy of parking. And the EIR, the data is already short a bit. And when the car groups come and rent the large reservable space, these groups that have fancy cars or old cars, they will often park 20 to 30 cars in that open area that's right next to the Adobe caretaker's house. It's open, it has no trees. And so this is currently posed as the demonstration garden. And I just want to throw out my thought that the garden plants could be throughout the park and labeled, and that this area might be a good additional parking space area. That might also enable a few more ADA parking spaces to be added back in. It's just a thought that I wanted to put out while I had an opportunity.
Thank you, Alice.
Alice, are you thinking that would be overflow parking, not paved, similar to what it is today?
My thought was that, when the big groups come and rent that largest space with the two roofs, they park right near it, in front of it, but that it would be available. I was not thinking of it as overflow parking. It certainly could be. I was thinking of it as very accessible parking right there where that big group area is. People often come for lunch there during the week too, and it's a convenient place, I thought, that could be regular parking.
Okay, great. And David, did you have anything you wanted to add before we move to community engagement?
Yeah, I know we're coming to a close, so I'll try and just keep it quick and short. But just a few quick things. First off, a hope for me would be that we're not, I guess, giving preference to short-term cost cutting, and we're thinking about doing it right up front, knowing that we don't want to go back later and have to fix things. And I'm saying that because what Scott brought up with the turf and the grass thing, I think is going to be, a really good discussion. And I think, one thing we'd want to consider is like, hey, up front, grass is going to be a lot cheaper, but in the long run, what might be better is paying more for something like turf. So that type of conversation, I think I just love to keep the long haul of the project in mind. And then And then as it relates to sports fields, I think that's and then how it's going to be used and what's going to be available for the public versus organizations. My one hope is that we consider what is the current existing need for different sports programs. So certain sports, let's just say soccer or lacrosse, they all have a different level of need based off of what exists currently. For instance, there's no public full-size baseball field in Menlo Park. That should be considered when we allocate, to which groups can book at which times of the year and this and that. And then the last thing that I would say is that my hope is that when we do get to the point where people can go in and reserve certain, whether it be the amphitheater or the field or the tennis courts, that it's all done using the latest and greatest digital technologies, and it's not done with pen and paper, and that the renters are treated fairly in terms of communication, amenities, what they know is expected of them, and that it's not using sort of like some antiquated, PDF technology. It should be, of this day and age, if you will.
Great, thank you. So I know we're getting close to 3:30 here, but we did want to save some time to just talk about stakeholder outreach. As Nicholas and Christina mentioned, we're really hoping that you all can be ambassadors and champions for the park engagement process coming forward. So we'd love to just hear from each of you a bit about your outreach strategies, both that you plan to use, but also if there's locations or events or publications you think we can also tap into to make sure we're getting really broad participation. And I think just going quickly, we could take one little quick look at that schedule again. I think the next slide. You'll see we've, in addition to the 3 workshops that we have planned for February, June, and September, we're hoping to do a series of pop-up events. So this might be going, for example, Raphael, I think you mentioned the North Fair Oaks Festival. So that's a perfect example of where folks are turning out for the festival, but we can also have some boards up for the park and engage people who are already planning to be there. And we'd love for a number of these to be focused on, especially the youth play areas, and getting a lot of thoughts from youth on the design of those areas. So if you have ideas for pop-up events, we'd love to hear that as well. So Raphael, I think you'd kicked us off, earlier talking about Facebook Live and thoughts you might have about both engaging folks both through social media, but also physically. Any thoughts you want to share specifically? I tried to capture a few of those from earlier in the conversation.
Yeah, I just thought that David stressed something really important that I don't want to lose, is having a needs assessment based on sport activity and also community demographic need as far as like for spacing. It would be important to think about recalibrating the park study that was done a couple of years ago to getting us data that's going to represent what's best for the park usage. I don't want to lose that. I think that was a really good insight from Comrade David. Second, I think like one of the things to consider when it goes into outreach, as far as an action step, is for us to know when our next meeting is, to bring kind of all of our ideas together and have like breakouts. I don't think we'll have time to tackle it all today. So it's something I think we should table because it would be fair. But yeah, I have tons of ideas, but I think it'd be good to kind of nestle them together so that we're kind of on community ground there. Thank you.
I'm just curious, what would be an example of like, I'm trying to just wrap my head around like what a pop-up event would be. Tell me more about like the purpose of like a pop-up event. I'm curious.
So the idea behind a pop-up event is just recognizing people are really busy. It may be challenging to carve out time to go to like an evening meeting that's specifically about the park, but they may be out with their family, on a weekend at the North Fair Oaks Festival. And so
Okay.
while they're out there, it's kind of going to the community instead of having the community come to us. So while they're out there anyway, they have the opportunity to stop by the table. There's some boards, they can provide input on specific things. And it's just integrated into part of what they may be doing already as part of their day.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So it could be community events, it could be organization events.
Cool.
Yeah, and I would add to that, the other facet is to really try and target the outreach to specific groups like youth, for example, like Miranda suggested, knowing that they may not be able to come to like a full community workshop necessarily with their parents, but let's get out and do some youth engagement around play and other facets of the park vision so that it is truly multi-generational in its outreach.
Right. An example of that might be if there's a great after school program that includes kids that would likely be using this park to plan a workshop during that after school event so that they're already there, their parents don't have to worry about getting them there, but it's an opportunity to engage them in what they want to see in the park.
I think cool community days, like I'm just speaking from a baseball perspective, but I'm sure there's something from lacrosse and a soccer perspective also. But for baseball, for instance, like with Menlo Atherton Little League, who I do some work with, they have a hit-a-thon, right? Where the whole, it's a fundraiser, right? And the whole Little League comes out, like hundreds of families setting up a booth at something like that would be really cool. And you could just set it up right at the entrance. So it'd be cool. Maybe it's the opening day for soccer or soccer picture day, setting up something like that. I think could be really, really cool. And then as far as an organization standpoint, just like Rich has worked with Menlo Atherton Little League, I currently do a lot of, we can call it consulting work with Menlo Atherton Little League, also with Alpine West Menlo, and they also, Alpine just opened up a softball league too. So from connecting with certain organizations, I'm happy to reach out to them. I also have a fairly big email list of about 2,500 active families in Menlo Park, in Atherton, Redwood City, Palo Alto a little bit. And then also I work pretty closely with Menlo Park and Los Alamitos schools. So if it made sense to engage any of them, like the superintendent, I could certainly bring them to the table or at least chat with them as well.
Great.
Chris, I'd just like to add that, I find that people around the park they just don't know that there's no parking fee. They don't know the days that the park is closed. They don't know when this and that and the other. They didn't know about the movie night. If there could be a sign, even a whiteboard where things are written on right there by the park entrance and by the pedestrian gate, some way to really get the word out to people, the local people, but also farther out. A sign would get the local people. I put things on next door myself about the park, just trying to help make people aware of the days it's closed for squirrel abatement, for example. I find next door gets a lot of responses.
Great. Next door is good. Scott, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, well, so I'm a member of the Canopy group. Also, as I mentioned, I was an EQC member, and I am also currently a member of the Menlo Atherton Foundation. Through those three groups, I could share information with those parents, and they could also then share that with other parents as well. But as for Menlo Park City, some things that come to mind, they have an Easter egg hunt opened up to families in the spring. There's a farmer's market, every Sunday right downtown. Those type of places, I would think with a simple booth or even a table with some information would be one area where we would reach a lot of local residents. And that would be something that I would staff with, if we have a plan which we want to share with them, then that would be one of my ways to get out and reach the public.
Perfect. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Rich, did we hear from you yet on outreach thoughts?
No, I was just thinking in terms of locations, and the weather isn't great for this right now, but and I'm not sure if they're still having them, but the Marsh Manor area is a nice area where they have, it's a fairly busy area, and they do have music, but I think that stops in the winter, so they might not be having those Thursday night events anymore. I haven't But that's an opportunity, just again, fairly close to the park, to do some outreach.
Great. Great. And I think one thing we want to stress is just to, that just ensure that we're all sort of consistent in the information that we're sharing. So again, I think between the county and the project team, we want to make sure we pull that information together for you in advance so that we're distributing the same information to the various groups. So there's not confusion or different expectations about maybe what the community, what their opportunities are to engage. Let's see, Alice, did you have thoughts to add as well to the outreach before we wrap up here?
Well, I just mentioned two, but a third one, I asked Nick one time if we could have food trucks in the park, like one night a week or something like that. The park is so ideal with the picnic tables and everything right there. And so as we get into better weather, since, I think that would be ideal as well. I'd second what Rich said about Marsh Manor too. There's going to be a pizza place coming that's going to be very popular, and it's going to be a place where people gather more and more.
Okay. That's exciting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
State of Mind Pizza is excellent.
Where Squeezin' is, where Squeezin' used to be. That's good. That's good news.
Coming in late January.
Yay.
Well, I can't believe we just have a few minutes. This time has gone so fast. It's been so wonderful to get to know everybody and get some preliminary thoughts from you all. I already feel like this is going to be a really productive working group going forward. Looking ahead, one thing that we are hoping to do is schedule a site tour with all of you in January so we can get out and walk the park, get to know each other a little more and kind of dive a little deeper into some of the key issues and opportunities. And as we mentioned, we'll be reaching out to you in January also with some outreach materials that you can share. And then we will be scheduling our next sort of Zoom meeting in February after that first workshop. So we'll have a chance to debrief and start looking at that next phase.
One thing I wanted to mention, Miranda, that I think Raphael brought up a good point as far as having additional ideas and things we want to share that waiting until after the next workshop is not necessarily going to be helpful. So trying to figure out whether it makes sense to have the group email us as they have ideas, or is there some other way that we can sort of collect that information? I mean, what I love about having the working group like this in person, at least all together, is that we can share the ideas and we can at least hear from each other, and it may stimulate another idea. But I'm wondering, how can we do that still as a forum, as a group we can all see, but also still, I want to make sure we capture those ideas, because if you have more ideas, we want to hear all of them.
We could certainly put what we've heard so far into a Google Doc and share that out with the group. If you all want to take some time to add to that, that would be helpful.
Another idea might be for one of our other large project groups, we created an email for that working group. So it'd be through the county, but obviously that email could come into us. Obviously you can share with other working group members, and then that gets passed on to CMG and SKIO. If that's something that is of interest, let me know. It'll take a little time to set up with our ISD department, but we can do that. And I would say for this other group that we worked with, Raphael, you might remember this, we actually created business cards. So when you're out in the community and you say, hey, I'm part of the working group with, Flood County Park, as we move into this next stage and into, realizing the plan, if you have any, ideas or information or questions, you can send it to this email, and it, everybody sees it. So.
Yeah, Raphael, I just wanted to say I appreciate your thought about doing a session that's focused on more in depth on outreach, because it's so critical, and Jose as well. We have limited time. We know you all are all busy. What I am wondering is, per Christina's suggestion, is if we did get a Google Doc, that you all could list a few of the key locations, events, contacts, so that as we're going forward and formulating the next, outreach events after the first workshop, that we can come to that having digested that a little bit, and we can spend some time in that second workshop really diving into the outreach that we anticipate for the remainder of the project with you all, with a focus on the pop-up, events and other opportunities for us to get information out to different groups of the community. So.
Well, Nicholas,
Chris, if I may, sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Raphael. Raphael, go for it.
Yeah.
My internet's spotty right now. Sorry. I was just thinking it'd be nice to have like a matrix that you all could have us fill in with events and like going into June of what we know is happening in our kind of space, so that we could then share with you all to kind of have for us to talk about next time we meet.
Yeah, great.
Wonderful.
I love that idea. Thanks, Raphael. Yeah, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you all for spending this much time with us and committing to working with us going forward. I think the common takeaway that I have from today is just how much passion and love people have for this project and for this park, and I have zero doubt that is going to come through at the end of this, and that we're going to have a project that reflects the values and the desires and the wants of the public. At the end of the day, this is the best part of what we at the San Mateo County Parks Department get to do, is deliver on projects for the public. And so we're really excited about this. We're very excited about working with each and every one of you. I know you all have Carla's information. I'm going to send an email out responding to one of Carla's emails, so you all have my information. I am always available and happy to connect. And if you think of something afterwards that you want to share, please share with us. It's so important that we get off on the right foot for this part of the project, and that will set us in the course to really see this in the direction we want. So thank you again for spending time with us. Thank you for all of your ideas and your thoughts. I just can't thank you enough.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Everybody, happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
Well.